Inspiration is found in a lot of places, and for one young man, it's no further than his grandfather, in the hangar.
I used to be a well-respected member of the aviation community, and then I started flying to Cirrus, and that changed.
Oh, that was great until the engine quit.
And all of a sudden I see these explosions and these trees exploding.
I'm walking away a better pilot because of this discussion.
Hi, I'm Dan Millican. Welcome to In the Hangar at Off.Taking.
And I'm Christy Wong, at Pilot Christy.
Who do we have with us?
Today we've got John Wingfield with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
John, thanks. Now, you're on because you're an aviator. You fly. You have a plane, a P210. And so we've gotten to know you through the aviation community. But you've started looking at the history of your grandfather, and you found a lot of interesting things. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then introduce your grandfather.
Okay, cool. Yeah. My name's John Wingfield. Like you said, I'm 34, born and raised here in Dallas, Texas. Been flying for about 2 years now, so just got my certificate in November of 18. I fly a P210, 1979 P210 in, and just enjoy taking the family to Florida, get some beach time, a little bit nice break.
For a new pilot, you're flying a ton.
Yeah, I think I did some, not as much as Christy here. I think she kind of takes the cake in that. But it's about an hour a day, maybe a little bit more. So I've logged.
So you're getting over 300 hours a year?
Yeah, I've logged about 160 hours in 2019 so far. So,
wow. Good.
But yeah, about an hour a day or so is what I'm logging. So.
All right. Well, so tell us about your inspiration. I mean, you got a name like Wingfield anyway, so it only stands to say that you'd be in aviation.
It's only natural.
Right.
It's only natural. Who's your grandfather?
Yeah, so this is my grandfather, Captain Robert Lee Wingfield. I think that's him in all four of these photos. Even him, this is his B-24 Liberator bomber that he was a captain on in World War II. So
How did he get into aviation?
So he got into aviation, long story short, so he was born in 1918, kind of grew up poor, grew up through the Great Depression, so probably like most people, if not everybody, was kind of poor during that time. And he wanted to be a pilot. That just interested him and intrigued him, and he was like, well, I might as well just have the military kind of pay for it. So he enlisted in what before the Air Force was formed was called the Army Air Corps.
Right.
So enlisted in that, and
was that before the war?
yeah,
And what was he doing at that time? Was he in college?
Yeah, so he enlisted while World War II was going on. The United States had not been bombed at Pearl Harbor yet, so the United States had not entered into the war.
Right.
But the war was going on. He enlisted at age 28, so he had gone through college. Actually, was a national track star, ran 440, 220, 100. Was on the U.S. Olympic team.
He was on the Olympic team. In what year?
He was an alternate in 1936.
So the year they went to Berlin.
Yeah.
Jesse Owens.
Exactly, yeah. He was an alternate to Jesse Owens, and his goal at that time was to be, a world famous runner, kind of sprinter. And so then I believe the 1940 Olympics was canceled because Germany wanted to take over the war, or the world, and so. At 28, his chances after that were kind of shot, and so he needed something else to do. And he goes, I want to fly planes, and so why not have the military teach me? So he enlisted, and they got him flying planes right away, and so that's kind of how he got into aviation, was through the military.
And he started flying bombers and doing sub patrols.
Yeah. So I want to say. Obviously he told these stories to my father, and my dad's one of 7 kids, so big family, have a lot of aunts and uncles, so by the time it made it to me, got in there probably flying trainers and that sort of stuff, but back then they put you in combat or the role pretty quickly, so he was flying B-18s, B-25s, doing sub-patrol, B-24s. His first active combat role was in Havana, Cuba, and then on the eastern coast of South America, flying sub-patrol during the war, once the U.S. had entered the war.
And did he, You said he enlisted, so but, I know that back then they did have some flying enlisted pilots, like technical sergeants and stuff. But was he an officer? Did he switch
Yeah,
over?
I think, and I don't know what the process was back then, but basically, for the little I know, now you can go through like OCS, officer candidate school.
Right.
But he enlisted, says, that he didn't get drafted, but and he didn't go to like a major 4 university that feeds the military. But I want to show up and participate, but I want to fly. So whatever that route was back then, was the route that he took.
Okay.
So yeah, when he was flying, his rank was captain.
Okay, so he was pilot,
Yeah.
and then he did sub patrols in South America, Central America. Then he went over to Europe, to North Africa.
Right. Yeah. So he flew sub patrol for a couple months. Actually, I think they did that at night, and have radar on the planes, and picked up a sub. So he said he'd circle back around and turned on his landing lights to see the sub, and then as soon as the landing lights went on, he was taking fire from the
Right.
sub, which is kind of a bad idea, and turned those landing lights off. Flew back around, deployed a bunch of depth charges, and then sank the sub. So that he kind of got a little taste of combat and action being shot at here before he went over there.
Now, did you hear that story from your research, or is that one of the stories? I mean, I know that generation did not talk a lot about their own heroics.
Yeah. So I heard everything I know. The majority of what I know is from my dad, and then my aunts and uncles,
Okay.
and some stuff too from my grandfather. He passed away in 2012, 7
Okay.
years ago. So I was 27. So I'd heard some stuff, but
Right.
I probably wasn't the best listener when I was younger, and so maybe I should have paid more attention
Right.
back then. But I found out a couple things. Just do my own research, but more so as a reinforcement to kind of what I already knew, or just details that kind of filled in some holes. So they sent him over to North Africa, and from North Africa, they were bombing in Italy. I guess that's when Mussolini kind of controlled Italy, and so part of his time was bombing runs in Italy, and then once they took possession of some things there, his new home base kind of became Pantanella, Italy. And then from Pantanella, Italy, then they did stuff into Germany, Romania, that sort of stuff. So he kind of leapfrogged in, with strategic points.
So you've got a couple of really interesting stories about your grandfather. Like just, during his time flying, you were mentioning earlier that why don't you go ahead and jump into a couple of those stories, because I'm fascinated. I'm waiting to hear
Yeah, I
the
want
end
to hear
of
the
it.
stories.
Yeah. So my father told me that my grandfather never talked about the war, and I think that's probably a lot to do with just the generation
Right.
and just kind of the culture back then compared to now. So for 40 years after the war, he never really talked about the war until someone approached my grandfather and had a video of an emergency landing that he made, which I can talk about in a second. And my father said, he never talked about the war until he saw that video, and then after he saw that video, he never shut up about it. So it was kind of just, whether it was a good or bad thing, just opened the floodgates of all the things that he went through. And so, just kind of on that, cultural, generational difference. These are not actually his real medals. When he was awarded all these, but when he, got him and got back home from the war, he just threw them in the trash can. He goes, I don't care. That's not what I was there to do. It doesn't really matter. I don't really want to think about it. A lot of guys, I don't think, wanted to relive what they lived through. So he threw them all in the trash. And it was one of my uncles that actually made this for my grandfather when he was still alive, just so he could remember some of the stuff. But one of the times, it was May the 2nd of 1944, and they were flying from North Africa, and they were going to do a bomb run on Parma, Italy. And so there's actually a video of my grandfather telling this story, and it's funny and interesting to see that video because obviously I remember his personality. And so he's sitting there in this video and he goes, yeah, we're going to go to, Parma where they make Parmesan cheese. Yeah, that's just how I'm thinking, okay, it's other side of the world. And he's just like, oh, that's where Parmesan cheese is from, And so it was cool to kind of watch that part of the video. But they were going to Parma, and I think it was a 12-ship formation. And so you basically had your lead ship, then someone flew left wing, and then he flew right wing. So he was the deputy leader of that flight. And then you had 3 other groups, and the way that they staggered them could provide, I guess, maximum defense against fighters and that sort of stuff. That's how they kind of did formation. And so the agreement was, hey, if your engine goes out or if you're bailing, you go up and to the right. So there was, on the lead plane, one of his commanding officers wanted to fly that day to get some, war experience. And so he told the guy that was flying right seat, hey, sit in the back, I'm going to fly up here with the captain. And so they were 7
And
miles.
that was his plane?
That was the lead plane.
The lead plane,
Yeah.
your grandfather's in the other.
Yeah, so my grandfather's
the
flying the
deputy.
right wing.
Yeah.
And so the lead plane, I forget the name of it. It was either Shoo Shoo Baby or something. I know the pilot, I think, was Shoemaker of the lead plane.
Okay.
And this colonel that really was the commander of the whole base goes, hey, I want to go up. And I forget what they call these missions, but they were basically like underhand soft pitches, like, hey, just go, go get some bomb experience.
Get some combat experience.
Yeah, this is going to be an easy thing. It was his second combat mission he ever flew. And so that colonel saw flak in the distance, got scared, and says, forget this, I'm out. So he wasn't the commander of that ship, but took the yoke or whatever back then. And
Just out of fear, maybe he's just.
went back and out. And so the whole formation was like, oh, okay, we'll go this way. Well, so as the deputy commander, my grandfather goes, well, that's not, if this person goes up and to the right, I'm now the leader. So he went to the leader, and the left wing, the plane that was flying left wing on that formation came up, and his right, B-24 has two rudders, two vertical stabilizers, came up, his right rudder, the left wing plane hit my grandfather's, his rudder came off, stuck on the nose turret of my grandfather's plane.
Wow.
And in one of the videos, my grandfather goes, yeah, it was like a fork and a hot dog. Like, that's just, if you imagine, it was a fabric wing and rudder. So covered up the nose turret, trapped the nose turret gunner in there, kind of covered up the windscreen a little bit. Then that left wing plane went back down, came back up again, hit, now missing the right rudder, right tail, hit the left rudder tail of his plane on my grandfather's, and then that plane split in two. So the tail gunner and that ball separated. He went tumbling down. The other, I think, 9 people in that plane, they went spiraling down. So I think it was 10 people in that left wing
Nobody
plane.
got out?
No one got out.
Man.
And so all the people that were in that left wing plane, they all went down. They were about at 24,000 feet when the accident happened.
Oh, wow.
Oh, gosh.
And so my grandfather's plane was flipped upside down, went into a, unusual attitude, spun from, the low 20s to, I think there's reports from 2,000 to 5,000 feet is when he regained control. And so
So he fell from 22,000 feet all the way to 2 to 5,000.
yeah, pretty close, yeah. And so when he goes upside down, he kind of gets his mind going and goes, well, what do I need to do in this scenario? And so he rang the bailout bell. And so, including him, there was 10 people in his ship. 4 people jumped out because he told them to.
Right.
Obviously, the plane's
Said bail.
doing all sorts of stuff going.
Did they still have their bomb load on there?
Yeah, so they had their bomb load. And so my grandfather, again, I guess he kind of operated by a different mentality with a bunch of stuff. One of the quirks about him was he never wore his parachute when he flew. He sat on it, and he goes, if I'm going down with my ship if it's going down, but they got shut up all the time. So he goes, I want a little bit extra padding, below my rear end, and that way his parachute would help absorb some of that flak. So when the plane went upside
silk
down.
is a really good bullet preventer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just durable, like Kevlar, whatever. So when he goes upside down, he probably got off his seat, and that parachute went out the doors. So he goes, well, I'm stuck here. So, he had 20-something thousand feet to
try to figure it out.
Yeah, and so I know I was reading one of the reports. They kind of downloaded from all the people that were on the plane. Hey, what facts do you know? Tell us everything you know. And one of the guys said, Captain Wingfield rang the bailout bell, and I got my parachute. I'm heading out towards the door, and I see some feet sticking out of the flight deck. He goes, well, someone might be trapped. So I forget the individual on the plane, but ran up to the flight deck, found my grandfather, and I think one of the radio guys or the navigator had just regained control of the plane. And he goes, well, now that the plane's under control, I'm not going to bail out. And so that was around 2,000 to 5,000 feet. So they regained control of the plane. That tail was still stuck on the front of the plane. The gunner and the nose turret was still trapped in there. And so they were somewhere over Corsica, somewhere over Italy, and they flew, I think, about 2 hours, 200 miles
After that?
back. Yeah, after that. Pitot 2 broke off, so you didn't really have an indicated airspeed, but, just, I guess,
Pitot
full
2
throttle,
broke off.
and to the closest airfield that they knew of. And I think at that time, in one of the reports I read, he said, I couldn't remember if this one airfield was under Allied control or was under enemy control. He goes, well, we had to land. And so that was the nearest field that he knew existed. And so right before they were going to make this emergency landing with that rudder on their nose, they flew over some water pretty low, and then they dropped their bomb load. But they were so low that they felt, I guess, the percussion of it, and so that was kind of like an afterthought. It was, oh, dang, yeah, but
Learning lessons.
better make an emergency crash landing without munitions on the plane. And so at that
Note to
airfield,
self.
Yeah.
before you ever do an emergency out, let's drop our bombs,
Yeah, make sure you don't have munitions on board.
Right. And so they were just going to go make a landing at an airfield, hoping that it was under Allied control. 4 of the people of his crew in the plane had already bailed out, and they saw the parachutes. So he had included himself 6 in the plane, 4 jumped out. And it turned out, since it was under Allied control, there was some movie company filming some footage on fighters. And so I've seen this reel, they're filming it, fighter planes, and then the camera like pans over, and then you see this big old B-24 coming in with this giant covering over the nose, making this emergency landing.
Wow.
And then it just he comes to a stop, and my grandfather gets out of the plane and just walks around and is kind of like, like, okay, well, we made it, and
Wow.
so they took the rudder off the plane and threw it on the ground and kind of put the plane back together a little bit that day, and then took off from there.
back to base?
Yeah, that same,
Wow.
like that afternoon or whatever, and flew back to their North Africa base. So,
Wow.
And then 2,
What happened to the 4 guys that parachuted out?
yeah, 2 of the guys were captured and were POWs. They were released, and so they
Yeah, it was
survived.
44, so it was only about a year, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't long, but they were POWs. I guess over Italy, Mussolini. I'm not sure. 2 of them landed, were found by, I guess, the Italian resistance. I've heard
Right.
called the Italian underground, and then they ended up linking up with my brother's in the military in the army with U.S. forces, I think, which is the 143rd Army outfit. Which is what my brother's in now, and so
Oh.
basically the Italian resistance handed off these 2, U.S. soldiers to the nearest U.S. people 4.5 months later. So it took them 4.5 months to get back to other U.S. personnel. So everyone survived.
Except the guys in the other airplane.
Those were
And
casualties there.
That commanding officer that panicked and did that, what happened to him, do you know?
So, obviously my grandfather didn't know why that
Why
lead
they
plane
had-
went up, and so everyone kind of lands, and then that pilot goes, hey, this dude in the right seat, took over my airplane. And so I bought a bunch of books over the past couple of weeks, everything I could find.
Right.
15th Air Force Wing, 464th Bomb Group, and he was in Squadron 779. So everything I can kind of find related to that, I've been reading and digesting. And one of the things I read in one of these books was some of the pilots wanted to find a way to get that colonel up in the air and shoot him down. Horrible leadership, but they couldn't figure out a way to do it without
Getting in trouble himself.
yeah, he wasn't going to go fly by himself, or without
okay,
costing
or jeopardizing
innocent-
others.
Yeah, and so that colonel ended up dying in a crash months later. But that same colonel that
He died in a crash.
basically precipitated the accident that day, my grandfather says, I'm never gonna fly with that guy. He's never coming to my plane. Well, my grandfather didn't get to make those decisions. Someone else above him put that colonel
In his plane?
in a plane on another mission. And so that was my grandfather's second, European mission. So somewhere between the second one, and he flew 51 missions over there.
Wow.
So somewhere in that range, that colonel flew right seat, and they were doing some bombing run, and engine temps were a little hot. So that colonel who was flying right seat pulled back the throttle, and my grandfather goes, don't do that in my plane, pushed it back in. He was being respectful. And then word has it that colonel went and pulled back the throttle again, and so my grandfather turned and basically slugged the commanding officer of their whole outfit in the eye, and just decked him. And then that colonel just basically sat there with his hands in his lap the entire time. And so
Did your grandfather get in trouble?
he got
He
in
didn't
trouble.
throw away his medals.
Yeah. He got in trouble. It was after that run. I think that colonel was supposed to be out of town doing something or on another base. And so he thought, hey, while this guy's out of town, I'm going to go, fly down over the deck over his tent, like at 50 feet off the ground with my B-24, make his papers go everywhere. Well, it turns out the colonel wasn't out of town. The colonel was in his tent. And so the B-24 flew over at 50
So
feet
it's
above
enough
the
that
floor.
he decked him, he buzzed him as
Yeah, then he
well.
buzzed him after the fact, as his revenge. And so he was a captain. He stayed a captain. He probably should have been lieutenant colonel or major. And so when he left the war, he got married shortly thereafter, and his wife wrote in, hey, what? My husband was war hero or whatever. Why wasn't he, higher rank? Well, ma'am, he slugged his
Commanding
officer and he buzzed his tent. So, yeah, so.
But not without cause.
Yeah, not without cause. And there was, just think about, I remember the first time when I was getting my license doing a stall, like on the second flight training lesson. I was holding on to the pillar of the plane because I didn't really know what a
Right.
stall was. I was like, oh, it wasn't that bad. But think about these guys, the guy that was trapped in that nose turret, and they're going down. He's like, I'm trapped in here. I'm going to be the first to hit. So that guy actually refused to ever fly again after a second mission.
Okay.
And they threw him in the brig, the jail. And my grandfather even said him and all of his other guys, they cussed at him, spit on him, just said, hey, you wimp. Like, that's how they kind of thought of that guy. But think about the guy in the nose turret. Like, he was thinking, I'm going to die. There's nothing I can do about it.
From 24,000 feet down to 2 to 5, he's got a big picture view of the ground coming up at
he's
him.
looking at like, hey, I'm dead in 2 minutes. And they have bomb group reunions, and it wasn't until 10, 15 years ago that guy in the nose turret kind of showed back up, and all the guys on that plane that didn't treat him very
Right.
well, they just started bawling. They're like, man, we
Oh,
are
wow.
so sorry. Like, I think my grandfather was 29 when that happened, So, I mean,
They're all young men.
I'm still immature. I was more immature in the years past, and as my grandfather got older, they're like, hey, we kind of realized the error in our ways, and but yeah, that guy had never flown again after that incident. So,
Wow.
but
Well, that's an amazing story about Captain Robert
Yeah.
Wingfield. So you have a lot to be proud of for your grandfather. You're on a quest. You're trying to find a piece, a rivet, something of the plane that he flew. What's the story?
yeah, so
there?
that was kind of in aviation, and I thought it would be cool. One thing we wanted to do, which we didn't get a chance to do, was sit down with our grandfather and even just like hire somebody to like sit with him for a week and just let him just tell these stories and just document this stuff, because once that's gone, like all we realize is kind of now hearsay. And so we wanted to get it in writing, get it written down, and we weren't able to do that, but I'd like to know more about him and what he did in the war, and even his plane. It was called the Big Fat Mama, was his plane name. And I thought, hey, if there's like a wheel or a rivet in a museum or someone's drawer that's a collector, like, can I go get my piggy bank and go buy it, like kind of preserve it? And so
Right.
that was kind of the start of this quest, was what happened to the plane? And if it's not in a million pieces, can I go see it? Even if it's
Have you found anything?
today, actually, on 5 minutes before leaving this way, I found the end result, and so it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted it to be in a museum
Right,
or
you want-
something.
yeah.
I actually got confused on the serial number because there's some typos, and so I
Right.
look at a bunch of sources, and 6 or 7 sources said it was this serial number, and then one says it was another, and I followed that other one
The other.
originally, and so I found a database and confirmed that this serial number, which I now know to be true, was the one that was involved in that accident around Corsica. And then I think in May of 1945, after my grandfather was already out, the plane was renamed Black-S, which was Black Sugar, was the new name of the plane. So I guess it had new nose art. And when that plane was coming back in to make a landing at the Pentella base, the nose gear collapsed, and so it had a belly landing. And that was really towards the end of the war.
So they just scrapped it?
Yeah, so the result was salvage. So, okay, tail goes to this plane, machine guns go to that
Right.
plane. But back then, there was over 18,000 B-24s that were made.
Right, wasn't that the most made
I think
plane?
so. Yeah, so it's not like there was 100 of them, but there was
No.
tons of them. And it cost more to fly the planes back to the U.S. than they were worth once they got back to the U.S. So they just
Right.
left them. So kind of on that, Pantanella base that they had. So I think it's probably, there's no paper log or tracking of where anything. It just got
lost to salvage in 45.
Yeah. So by another pilot, and so not that it was anything that pilot's doing, but just had a gear collapse, and then they just split it apart and put those parts on other planes. So.
Well, it's great to hear about a baller pilot like this guy.
Yeah, he is a truly baller pilot.
Yeah.
I wish he was still alive.
Yeah,
That would be
he's-
amazing to get to
has some
talk to
cool
him and get
stories.
his stories. Yeah.
You have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's things on YouTube that I just Googled or searched on YouTube, B-24 crash landing Corsica, and I think I sent you.
Yeah.
Whoa! There's a DVD that was made called On the Wing. There was a book inspired by him called The Damned Wear Wings. So he was kind of the inspiration about that, and there's a new character. So it's cool to just kind of see that history.
Yeah.
But he was a real kind of all or nothing kind of guy. He's like, I'm going to go in with all my chips or none at all. And so sometimes it panned out well and sometimes it didn't. But that's kind of how he was.
Good for him.
Good man. All right, John, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming and sharing the story.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and thank you guys for watching. And as always, if you like it, hit that share and subscribe button, and we'll see you guys next time in the hangar.